signaling a likely shakeup at the U.S. State Department, just when the U.S. is facing some of its most dire diplomatic challenges in decades.
It could be a Rexit. U.S. President Donald Trump is said to be deeply unhappy with his Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, plans to replace him with CIA Director Mike Pompeo. A source tells CNN, quote, "The clock is ticking for Tillerson."
But those familiar with the situation say Mr. Trump doesn't want to fire his Secretary of State. Instead, he hopes public shaming will force Tillerson to quit. The president had little to say on the matter on Thursday as he met with the Crown Prince of Bahrain.
Mr. President, do you want Rex Tillerson on the job, Mr. President?
He's here. Rex is here.
Well, for more on this, joining us now, CNN's Paula Newton in Seoul, South Korea. Also here in Los Angeles, national security analyst Rebecca Grant, an expert on international relations. Thank you for both being with us. Rebecca, let's start with you. Rex Tillerson, he's been a dead man walking for a while. The only question has been, when will they bury the body? But if these reports are true, why would any administration not only force out the Secretary of State, but then replace him with the director of the CIA? These are two crucial departments in the midst of a crisis, a nuclear standoff with the North Koreans.
I think it's a question now still of when and if. So people that have left the Trump cabinet have typically left on a Friday night, so that would be tomorrow. But what we're hearing is that this is a plan that's going to take place over a period of weeks. And there are others like Jim Mattis at the Pentagon who say don't make anything of it. So I think it's a little too early to say for sure that Tillerson will go. You know, Tillerson is a bit of a cipher. He's very contained, very different personality from the president, and he may just not like Washington. But you raise a good question. Why in the midst of the North Korea tensions? Is there some political motivation here? I think we have to hear a lot more about what's going on with Tillerson before we start counting the days.
Being cautious, okay, we'll run with that. Paula, the biggest problem of all, it seems, for Rex Tillerson when it comes to other world leaders is that they just don't believe that he speaks for the U.S. president. Is that how it's perceived there in Seoul and I guess even more importantly in Pyongyang?
Yeah, I'm not sure Rex Tillerson believes that he can speak for the president, especially given the doublespeak. It doesn't matter if I'm in Moscow or if I'm in Seoul. You hear that every time from the diplomatic corps here. And in terms of what's going on here, I mean, look, the relationship between South Korea, Japan, China, and the U.S. military is solid. Those lines of communication are all open. What you see, though, is a growing frustration with the fact that Rex Tillerson and that diplomatic track does not seem to be working in any kind of functional way. Now, to kind of prove that he did have some insight on this issue, Rex Tillerson, around this crisis, has said that there will be a diplomatic summit in Canada, in Vancouver, in early January. That was to appease the South Koreans, to say, look, all defenses put aside, we can talk about anti-defense missiles until we're blue in the face, but we want to know how we're going to bring North Korea to the table. So to that end, Rex Tillerson set up this summit. The problem is now, if you're South Korea, you're wondering, okay, wait a minute. So he's leaving? Is this summit still going to go on? He's the only sponsor of it. We haven't really even heard from the White House about this entire summit. So it definitely is incredibly unsettling for allies, especially when you get to the situation with North Korea and such advancements in that ICBM.
And Rebecca, with that in mind, who is actually going to sit down and have a serious conversation now? Even if this story isn't true, it's out there. Tillerson has been undermined for months by the president. So which world leader will have a serious conversation with Rex Tillerson now?
Well, I think there are a lot of world leaders that will have these serious conversations, with Tillerson and with others in the U.S., and it's going to take a group effort by world leaders to eventually talk with North Korea. I expect this still to end in talks, and we're really waiting now to see if there's any sign that North Korea might be ready to talk at some point. Now that Kim Jong-un has declared his arsenal to be complete, I was very interested to watch South Korea's response. We're hearing that Trump and Moon have talked a couple times. South Korea has very carefully said they didn't think that ICBM test crossed any red lines. I hear that meaning that they are still trying to leave the door open for some negotiation. Of course, we're hoping China is going to make some of those talks happen too.
And with regards to that, Paula, with more time to study the images which were released by the North Koreans of this ICBM, it seems there is a lot more revealed about just how far advanced this technology is. Listen to part of Brian Todd's reporting.
Now you have two, which provides double the thrust, which means this missile can carry a much larger payload to a longer distance. In other words, it can threaten the entire United States with a nuclear warhead.
There's a new navigation system as well. There's greater lift. They actually had a dummy warhead, which was meant to replicate a nuclear warhead. So, Paula, there seems to have been almost a collective gasp by many in the US, and now very real concern over just how quickly this missile program is advancing.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody's been watching that, especially because predictions did not prove true, did they, John? I mean, we didn't think we'd be talking about it at this point. Now, even though they haven't nuclearized that warhead yet, that warhead yet, look, even South Korea is saying this could happen by the end of 2018. What does that mean? It means exactly what Rebecca said. What is the program here? What is the opening for North Korea to go to that table? And for that, listen, it's going to take a lot of diplomatic heavy lifting from China, Japan, but obviously, principally, the United States, and you're left wondering who is left to do that.
And Rebecca, this missile flew, what, 10 times higher than the International Space Station, which is 500 miles higher than any previous missile test. It was in the air for about 15 minutes. That's 8 minutes longer than the previous launch. So how can those advances have come in less than a year?
We have to remember this is frightening stuff, but it's still 1960s technology. And they have done, under Kim Jong-un, they've done over 50 tests of these missiles. So there's some things we don't know. We don't know how good the burn rate is in boost phase. We don't know if they can do a standard trajectory. We've only seen a loft trajectory. We don't know if they can have a warhead survive re-entry. So we know that what they may have right now is just a great big missile that they can launch and that we can intercept with our interceptors in Alaska should they try it. You look at the lines of the range and it covers everything. It covers Canada, the U.S., it covers all of Europe, and I think that's why we see such a strong international coalition at the UN saying that we have to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. We still have a lot to do. We have a jar full of military and diplomatic options. We're still using sticks. We may have to start with the carrots, but I do expect this to end in talks. We have to keep the military pressure on, and we have to keep the pressure on China until that happens.
I'm just curious, though, are the North Koreans getting help from another country, maybe from Russia or Iran? Here's a tweet from one missile expert in the U.S. He shows the launch vehicle here, the transporter launch of the missile. He says it's a big one, but if you take a look at the vehicle, it has 9 axles. The North Koreans say they made these trucks themselves, but they're probably Chinese trucks, which have been modified. So, Rebecca, that's one example, I guess, of the Chinese helping out the North Koreans. Could they be getting help from someone else?
Yeah, the Chinese have helped a lot. Most of this, of course, starts with Russia. They have Chinese technology, not only in their military forces. There have been rumors for a long time about assistance from Pakistan. But again, this is 1960s technology. They've mastered it. But, we need to stop it before they go out and develop or procure something worse, like cruise missiles or hypersonics. No question, they are getting some help. They are still carrying on a little bit of their international arms trade. The UN is really trying to pinpoint the firms that are involved and the financial mechanisms to shut down the last of North Korea's arms trade that helps them get in some of the money and the expertise for this missile program.
Okay, Rebecca, thank you. Rebecca Grant there with us in Los Angeles, and also Paula Newton in Seoul, South Korea. Thanks to you both. Okay, well.